Okay. Well, I apologize in advance. I'm apparently the token English speaker today, but we'll do better in my English than we would in my German, and my Swiss German's even worse. So I do have my colleague Achim Kraus with me today. We'll be happy to talk with you up at the stations later. He can do it in German, so if you prefer to have some conversations in German. Appreciate Philip and Arthur Weber for some of the words about Stellar Cyber. And I'm not really going to talk about our solution terribly much in this presentation. Instead, I want to talk a little bit about, what problem we're trying to solve, because I think it's the same problem that a lot of you are probably trying to solve as well, which is, the security space is very complicated. Let me see if I get the buttons right here. The security space right now is very complicated. There's a lot of noise from vendors like ourselves. Do this, do that. There's a lot of different solutions that are required to accomplish good security in your enterprise. And it's very confusing. There's a lot of acronyms, SIMs, XDRs, EDRs, NDRs, all kinds of DRs. And different vendors saying the same things or saying different things about the same acronyms. And so I just want to go over today's exercise a little bit just educational and informational about how do we solve some of the problems that exist in the world today. And do we keep solving the problems the same way that we've been solving them, or do we maybe need to look at them in a slightly different way? So you can see some of the big overriding problems that exist in the world today for security. It really boils down to three primary issues. We have way too many tools, like I was just saying. You can go and buy 50 different tools for your cybersecurity if you want, and not really understand even all the things that are covered or aren't covered. And so forth. So we have a lot of tools out there. The tools themselves there's a lot of problems with that. One is it's very expensive to buy all these different tools. Two, it's very hard to operate and manage all these different tools. And that kind of leads to the second issue, which was there's never enough people. Most of you are not having a cybersecurity business. You're like Arthur Weber, manufacturing, building, providing services, some of these other types of activities. Cybersecurity is a necessary kind of evil, as it were, to allow you to do your business well and safely. But as such, you have limited budget, limited resources to deal with the security issues that you do have. And one of the hardest things to fill is personnel. Cybersecurity trained personnel that you can adequately compensate, train, and to implement your security program instead of doing whatever it is that you do for your business, banking or manufacturer or whatever. The last one is we're in an age of just incredibly increasing data, and there's more data out there now than there ever has been, and it's increasing in exponential ways. With all the security tools and technologies that are out there, the number of alerts and things are also increasing. And so how do I deal with all these additional visibility, additional alerting that these tools can provide, but not be overwhelmed by that data? So these are some of the kind of problems that are overriding that we're going to look at how we address. Got some real quick, just light-hearted slides to kind of set the table. Cybersecurity defense teams today are just overwhelmed. They're never, satisfying the boss. They're always asking for more money. They're battling all these things from the earlier slide that we're talking about. At the same time, the requirements for spending are just going up and up and up, and it's an incredible demand on the budgets for enterprises to continue to fund the appropriate levels of cybersecurity that they need. On the other side of the equation, it's simpler than ever for anybody off the street to become a hacker or a bad guy, I guess, for lack of a better word. Literally can go to the store, buy some scripts, and get into business as a cyber hacker. And so it takes very little. Barrier to entry is very low, and the damages that can be done are very high. Not all hackers, of course, are that model, but the point is it's easier than ever to get into the business, as it were. You can see on these graphs the extreme uptick that we're seeing. 10 years ago, when we were peddling cybersecurity, a lot of it's the bigger, the big banks, the Citibanks and the Swisscoms and all these guys who have the big networks and the heavily exposed traffic are the ones who were primarily concerned and were therefore budgeting for cybersecurity. Today, companies like Arthur Weber are also feeling pressure, feeling attacks. We see across Europe, hospitals, manufacturing companies, huge uptick in attacks on these kind of mainstream enterprises. And as a result, there's a huge gap in what cybersecurity tools and capabilities that they have. That's not changing anytime soon. So what do we do about that? So the last 30 years or so, we've been building SOCs or security operations in the same way, essentially, and that is based on SIM technologies. All of you are probably familiar with different SIM solutions that are in the market, from QRadars and McAfee's to some of the newer solutions, Splunks and next-gen SIMs and different things like that. Then what you do when you're building the security operation is you start with that SIM and you start to add in all the different tools for the different types of attacks or the different types of data that you're looking at. So you may need to add in some threat intelligence. You might want to put in a sandbox to look at malicious files. You may want to put in some type of an NTA to look at network traffic and start doing some AI detections on your networks and your user behavior. And you need to acquire all these tools. You need things like threat intelligence and IDS. You combine all these things, and this is how we've been building security operations and security operations centers for many years. Stellar is at the forefront of something called Open XDR. Open XDR is looking at the same problem but taking a slightly different approach, which is rather than acquiring the security stack individually, we've purpose-built a platform that includes a lot of these previously separate tools in a kind of a unified purpose-built platform that allows for extremely efficient security operations and enhances the ability not just for detection of attacks and breaches, but also remediation and response to those in a coordinated way. So it's really trying to look at how do we position the security operations team in a better way to be more efficient and effective. So just real quickly, using Gartner's definition of a SIM as the foundation of a traditional security operation is a collection, is a tool that collects data ultimately, and it's doing so in order to, as Gartner says, support threat detection, compliance, and security incident management. Open XDR is similar in that we want to collect all the data, but we're collecting the data in order to provide automatic correlation of that data. The correlation is what is really the holy grail of what we're trying to get to in security today. And by correlation, what we want to do is we want to take the data from all of the different places that it exists, different tools, different networks, physical, virtual, wherever data resides, on the network, in the logs, in the cloud, from users, from applications. We want to collect all that data together And once we have all the data, we want to correlate events and alerts across all those different data types to find out what's truly going on in a given environment, and therefore make sophisticated detections and enable responses. So just a quick word about XDR itself. XDR, some of you may not be familiar with the term XDR. XDR was originally introduced as a term to kind of go beyond this old architecture of SIM plus a lot of tools. Palo Alto was actually one of the first companies that started talking about XDR. We added the concept of Open XDR, which is rather than just go buy all the Palo Alto tools as a solution, we wanted to be open to work with all different types of environments. So when we go into your environment and you're working with Palo Alto firewalls, but Cisco networking equipment and different WAFs and all kinds of different equipment that you have, we want to be able to still collect data from all of those and still correlate across all the different data types. You also have a lot of what's called EDR, or endpoint data detection and response solutions in the market. You may be familiar with names like CrowdStrike or SentinelOne, Carbon Black, some of these types of vendors. EDR is endpoint detection and response. And a lot of them are starting to say, we also want to move towards a more platform approach to this problem. And so we're going to extend our detection and response capability from the endpoint into other parts of the network. So XDR, from that definition, means extended detection and response, extended from something else, in this case, EDR. There's also other vendors, typically called NDR or NTA devices, which are looking at network detection and response. So network detection and response is some type of a sensor on the network. It's looking at the packet flows, and probably has a deep packet inspection for application awareness, things like that. And typically are using AI and advanced techniques in order to determine anomalies in the behavior of the network. Also the same type of technology that we're using to make determinations or anomalies in user behavior on the network, user behavior analysis, network traffic analysis. And so some of these NDR vendors are also looking to extend into other parts of the network. And you'll see sometimes something called a SIM triad, or a triad of security between a SIM, an NDR, and an EDR. And these are basically vendors from traditional solutions working in alliance to combine their different technologies. In an XDR solution, our approach is to build by design a platform that incorporates all these capabilities in one place. And I'll get to some of the benefits to this approach in a little bit when we look at why we have Open XDR and how it enables a next-gen SOC. So from a SIM perspective, going back to the definition on the right, on exactly what a SIM is and what it's doing in the network is we're basically collecting data through integrations. We're bringing in log data primarily and storing that data in a raw format. Enabling search, so in your SIM you're creating queries and writing rules manually to find information and to write detections. And then most SIMs are enabling some type of dashboarding and visualization capability. And then as you need more tools for the security operations, you simply buy additional either plugins or separate tools completely. From an XDR and from our view of XDR, we're not extending from anywhere. For us, the X in XDR means X equals everything, like the mathematical variable X. And the reason we talk about that is we truly want to bring in data from everywhere, because we've had a lot of presentations today about visibility, network visibility and monitoring. That's extremely important. And it's extremely important from a security perspective, as several of the presenters mentioned, to have all of the data. The more data that you can look at, the better your visibility picture is. But The trade-off is the more data you have, the harder it is to write all the rules, perform all the queries, and do all the work. And so some of the things that are highlighted here in an Open XDR solution are focused around, once we collect all the data, we want to fuse all those data together. So we take all the different data types that are in different security tools, and we normalize that data into a single metadata dictionary-based format that enables not only more efficient searching, but as we'll talk about in a minute, is critical in the use of machine learning or AI in making effective detections. So we have a normalization and then also an enrichment process, where by enrichment I mean adding things to the data like threat intelligence or geo-awareness, other pieces of information, IP reputation, things like that. We can fuse all of that into the data as it's coming into the data pipeline and into this kind of universal data lake, if you will, of all the different tools. And then the real secret sauce, if you will, or the real goal of an Open XDR solution is to provide those advanced correlations using things like machine learning and automation in order to not only make detections, but prioritize those detections. Which of all my detections or alerts are the most important? If I have 100 alerts, I can't manage 100 alerts today. Which are the 3 that I need to pay the most attention to? So it's prioritizing those alerts, but then going one step even further and correlating across alerts to identify something called an incident, which is typically consists of many individual alerts. And so using correlation is critical in order to draw that higher level picture of a incident. In a traditional SOC model, based on a SIEM with multiple tools, it's extremely hard to correlate across the different tools. Even if you are adding a function of a tool like a SOAR solution to the SIEM, which is the common way of doing this, the SOAR is typically aggregating only the alert itself, not all the context that goes with it from the data. And that's why the correlation is so powerful inside of the Open XDR platform. The other thing that we really enable in the platform, in an Open XDR platform, is that last R, which is response. The response capability is extremely powerful. It can be both manual or automated. So for example, once we make a detection, we can also automatically, through the use of APIs and other integrations, signal other security tools to perform a response. For example, if I detect an intrusion into my network, I can tell the firewall, please block that IP address, and it can be done automatically. The point of that is to be able to automate those capabilities so that it requires fewer resources, fewer people to operate. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I'm getting the signs from the back. These slides are actually going into the detail about how that correlation enables machine learning, the normalization, the data fusion part. It's extremely important as you're going. One of the problems you'll hear a lot of people talk about when you talk about machine learning solutions, AI solutions, network traffic analytics, things of this nature, is that they have a high incidence of false positives. And while that's a real problem, it highlights why data normalization and that data fusion process is so important, because when you start with the right data, only then can you get the more sophisticated answer effectively through machine learning. So if you don't have good data to start with, you don't get good data on the backside. So it's extremely important, and it's extremely hard to do in a SIEM-based architecture. Extremely hard. So what does this look like in the real world? Quick example here. You can see kind of in step one is we want to collect data wherever it is. Those can be from existing tools, network tools, firewalls, WAFs, and so forth, EDRs like CrowdStrike, cloud applications, Office 365, things like that, identity applications, and other applications. And we take all that data into the XDR system, we normalize it, enrich it in that data fusion process, and put it into one single unified data lake for all the different data types instead of separate data tools looking at different data sets. Then you can see in the illustration, we can show you in the demo up at the station if you're interested, you can see a construct of an incident, which each of the, you can't really tell on the here, but each of these blocks or icons represents individual alerts that were combined by the machine learning to identify an entire incident, complete with a timeline of step-by-step what happened, you know, starting with a phishing attack, and then a brute force login, and, you know, down the list all the way till your data leaving the network. All this can be identified, detected, constructed, alerted, and presented to the analysts automatically very quickly instead of a long drawn out manual investigative process. And then, like I said, we can add the response capability, block the firewall, block the IP on a firewall, disable a user, you know, submit an email or a ticket, and so forth. Just to close, and dealing with the first three problems that we mentioned at the beginning, you know, having the right data and reducing the number of tools looking at that data allows us to have fewer tools, which cost less money, both to purchase, license, and to maintain through people. People requires fewer people to operate and specialize in different tools. Also, the automation allows the security people that you have to focus on higher order tasks and not repetitive things that can be automated. And then, of course, you know, eliminating the blind spots between different tools by having a unified data lake and correlation across all the different tool types. Haha, I beat you to it, Stefan. So I'm sorry I had speed through some of the things and whatnot, but as Stellar Cyber, you know, we're very focused on providing cost-effective but sophisticated security tools that apply to you know, typical mid-market to large enterprise companies, simplifying both the procurement and the operations of security tools while delivering state-of-the-art response detection and response capabilities. Thanks very much.